You are now watching a special edition of the press preview live from Buckingham Palace. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with journalist and author Christina Patterson and former editor of OK Magazine and the Sunday Express, Martin Townsend. So let us see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, the front of The Observer pictures our new king, Charles III, as he ascends to the throne. Reunited for Granny reads the front of the Mirror as the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are pictured together for the first time in mourning. The Sunday Times also leads with that story with the headline, Warring Windsors, awkward truce to honour the Queen. The Daily Star also looks at the two royal couples' reunion. Reunited in sorrow reads the front of the Sunday Telegraph. And this same story is also on the front of the Sun on Sunday, their headline, All for One. The Sunday Express follows this story too with the headline, Together for Granny. William hands olive branch to Harry. And Peace for Gran reads the front of the Sunday People. And we are joined tonight by journalist and author Christina Patterson and former editor of OK Magazine and the Sunday Express, Martin Townsend. Welcome to you both. Let's start with The Observer, should we? Having a look at that front page, pictured there, King Charles III, as he comes to the throne, starting the morning with the formalities of that proclamation. Christina.
Well, I mean, I think we're all reeling, actually. It all seems to be happening so quickly that literally on Thursday afternoon, the Queen was our monarch, and now we have a new king, and the processes of state and constitution have kicked in, and he gave that incredibly moving speech yesterday. I would challenge anyone to watch that and not have had a tear while they watched it. And today it was the kind of almost bureaucratic side of things, although that was also pretty ceremonial with ex-prime ministers and so on. So things are kicking in quite quickly, really, and I think we're all adjusting to the fact that Charles is now our king. But I must say, he hasn't put a foot wrong since this happened, and I think, you know, not everybody has loved him forever, but I think everyone is feeling an enormous amount of sympathy and support for him at the moment. And I certainly feel, when he gave that speech yesterday, I couldn't help thinking, I'd been quite critical of him in the past, but I couldn't help thinking we're in good hands.
Martin, do you echo that? What did you make of the speech?
Very much so, yeah. Actually, funny enough, I bumped into our postman this morning, and he said to me, I've never really thought much about Charles. I've never really cared for him very much. But I saw his speech yesterday and I thought he was absolutely magnificent. And I think that's the point. I think he started so brilliantly yesterday and today as well. This mixture of solemnity and dignity, but also the human touch all the time, you know, talking about, you know, his mother and, you know, his love for his mother and all of that, and how he was sharing in the nation's grief. So I just think it's been a wonderful combination of the solemn and the human.
And then today, really wanting to actually get in touch with the people, literally,
Absolutely.
physically,
yes,
out on the streets, the walkabout. We saw people really wanting to hear from him and be close to him. And then you're almost tearing up.
Yeah, I know, that was
now.
also incredibly moving, the way that people wanted to kiss him and shake his hand, and he wanted, I'm sure there would have been, I mean, of course he has security guards with him, but nobody can guarantee absolute security at a time like this. But, you know, he is kind of fearless and very much wanting to show that he's one, you know, of the people as well as sovereign. But also, as Martin said, I think the emotional tone is very interesting. I think the Queen, as we know, was known for her stoicism, and after the death of Princess Diana, she felt she was doing the right thing in supporting her grandsons, but, you know, there was national anger at her lack of emotion, and she was kind of forced into a kind of U-turn in a way. She had to give this public speech sort of saying how sad she was about the death of Diana. And I think Prince Charles, King Charles, there we are already, King Charles is wanting to already establish that times have changed, and as a nation we are more in tune with our emotions now. And also there are issues he knows that the Prince of Wales, as I must now call him, William, that he is very keen on talking about mental health issues and so on. And I think it is part of a subtle shift in that direction.
Let's move on to the Express, and they're reporting on the Queen's wish coming true for Charles. What exactly are they referring to?
Well, they're referring to the fact that he's become now the head of the Commonwealth, which he's always wanted to be. And, it's been his dream, apparently, since he was a small child and he visited Malta. So, it's a wonderful moment for him. I mean, it's obviously a big challenge. But he seems determined and very passionate about sort of doing his best in that area. So, that's his wish come true.
Do you think, Christina, that we're going to see his role, though, as head of the Commonwealth change because of various comments that he's made in Rwanda in the evolving Commonwealth, if it even remains?
I mean, how can it not change? How can it not change? It already feels somewhat anachronistic, but I know there is still a lot of loyalty in a lot of the Commonwealth for the monarchy, and I think we'll just have to see. But certainly the political climate has changed, and that will be a huge challenge. And unfortunately for Charles, and I'm sure he's intensely, painfully aware of this, has so far not inspired and does not generally inspire the kind of adoration that the Queen has done. And I think the Queen was able to override so much of the politics of things simply through sheer force of her personality. I mean, even I remember there was footage of her first dance, but I can't remember whether it was the King of Ghana. Who was it? The guy.
Kaunda, I think it was.
Sorry.
The first dance with President Kaunda, was it?
Was it President Kaunda? And that was like, the first time a white queen has danced with a black man in public, and that was a huge thing at the time. And I think, she was so widely loved, and that she was and of course things were very, very different then. I think that will be a challenge for Charles, and we'll see. I think he has learnt so much in his years of being sort of probably too open about his political views that I think he probably brings a lot of wisdom to the role now.
Let's move on to the Telegraph. I think we can bring up next. Reunited in sorrow, the brothers and their wives together again in grief. We read that the Prince of Wales, got that one correct, has actually extended the olive branch.
Yes, which I think has taken everyone slightly by surprise today. I was certainly surprised that they appeared to have shared the same car to the Great Walk. I cannot imagine the atmosphere in that car, actually, to some extent, because I think the body language between them did not seem particularly comfortable on the walkabout. And one wonders, I mean, apparently it was William's idea, but I think it probably came from Charles initially. And I think Charles kind of planted the seed of it yesterday in his speech when he mentioned about Meghan and Harry making a life abroad and all of that. But it was something that I think a lot of the crowd wanted to see. But I think for them, it felt like a very kind of awkward moment. But let's face it, this has to be resolved. And I think efforts are being made by William and by Charles to try and sort of resolve this situation. Because I think the last thing that Charles needs in the early months of his reign or years of his reign is this sort of festering problem it's sort of carrying on. So I think he and William are both determined in their own ways, perhaps in William's case through gritted teeth, to actually sort of make this happen and have this kind of, bring this thing together and make peace, as it were.
Christina, do you get the sense that this is the end of any feud, if there was one?
No, I don't get that sense that it's the end of a feud, but I think it will. I think that William has made a huge effort, and of course Harry also. I'm not exactly sure what the power balance is, so whether Harry would have to do what his brother suggested, I imagine not. But I think the thing is that Harry's memoir is still looming, and there is enormous fear in the royal family about that. And we read today that Harry was told that Meghan would not be welcome at the Queen's deathbed, presumably because of things like her Oprah interview and Spotify podcast recordings and so on. I think the trouble is that their business model for surviving post-monarchy is predicated on them essentially moaning about the royal family and their experience of the royal family. And this would be a very, very bad time to be doing that. So I don't know what will happen on that front. I don't know whether the publication of the memoir will be delayed. I think it will be very hard to see that there will be real and genuine reconciliation between particularly Charles, well, actually all of them, Charles, William and Harry, if their memoir is truly explosive and critical of them. But we'll have to see on that front.
Yeah, I think the memoir is a really interesting point. And it feels as if, with the mood at the moment in the country, I think it would feel as if it would make sense for him to delay that, because I just can imagine the publication of it is going to be an incredibly unpopular move, given the great wave of support for Charles in the country, and obviously all the grief around the Queen and everything else. I think the idea of bringing that book out in, was it November, I think? It's sort of quite imminent, isn't it? So,
I can't remember. But
yeah, and I mean, I think also from the publisher's point of view, do they really want to be involved in that at this stage?
Yes, it remains to be seen whether that will be delayed. But what did you make of the optics of the announcement of the Queen's death being made before Harry was able to get to Balmoral?
I just think it was unfortunate, wasn't it? But I mean, it was just the way it was. I mean, you know, I think I don't think it was anything deliberate there. I mean, you know, it was just the sort of timing were sort of off, really. It didn't look good, that's for sure. But I think, you know, at times like that, and there was quite a bit of confusion, really. I mean, it was smooth in some ways, but there was also slight confusion, people rushing up, trying to be there, and obviously we know that not everybody was there. But that's the way these things sort of unfold, so...
On to the Sun, let's take a look at that, of the royals looking at flowers. That's also on the walkabout that they went on. There was also the other walkabout with other members in Balmoral, where you could see that the family was showing much emotion and, you know, quite open about their grief.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that it's not just that, you know, the nation has lost a queen. She was absolutely adored by her own family, and I think she was. You know, we saw generally the relatively emotionless side of her, but I think she was extremely funny. I did have the pleasure of meeting her twice, and I was actually just telling Trevor Phillips that. The poet John Agard, who later got the Queen's Gold Medal of Poetry, I was at a party in Buckingham Palace in 2002 because I was running the Poetry Society, helping to organise a Golden Jubilee poetry competition. And the poet, John Agard, was there, and the Queen came up and talked to Andrew Motion, the then Poet Laureate, and me and John Agard. And he was flirting with her, and she was laughing, and she was just great fun. And you think, gosh, people don't really see you like this. And I think she was, you know, she was funny, she was witty, she was sharp. Obviously, I barely knew her, but I mean, I didn't know her, I just met her. But people who knew her well loved her, and she was very kind. So they are all, and I think, you know, Harry and William were very close to their grandmother, and she will be deeply, deeply missed by her family. And it's difficult for them because they go through this private grief at a time of great public grief, and they have to kind of balance that, and that's quite difficult.
Yes, and very difficult for King Charles taking on this mantle when trying to deal with this grief. He's lost his mother. She was the Queen, but she was his mother.
You know, you lose your mum. I mean, it's just, you know, it's absolutely devastating, I think. And yes, she's having to go through that as well. I mean, the interesting thing, I think, in terms of the love that the children have, the grandchildren have, and for the Queen, came across when William was talking about the fact that he had this amount of time with the Queen. You know, he was grateful for that amount of time, and then mentioned that Kate had this amount of time. And it was almost like, you know, it was precious. I mean, obviously, she's been old. She's been old for a while, and, you know, the kind of shadow of what happened on Thursday has been there for a while. And I think that all of those years, those precious years, and I think the fact that William immediately sort of reflected on that just showed how valued those were and how close they were. They are an incredibly close family.
We're just going to move away from the story today here and move to Ukraine to finish off with. The Sunday Times and The Observer covering this story. And this is the pushback from Ukraine. It seems as if fortunes are turning.
Well, at the moment, but it's been, I think they've taken the most territory since March, which is absolutely wonderful news. They've taken, I think, Kupiansk and Izium up in the northeast, and Kupiansk is particularly important because it's a supply route for Russian soldiers to the east. So it looks great. I mean, I think we hardly dare breathe when it comes to Ukraine because Putin will do absolutely anything, and he is prepared to feed every Russian male in the country through the meat grinder of his horrible, horrible operation. But certainly, it sounds as though they've taken nearly 1,000 square miles of territory, which is phenomenal. So long may it last, and let's hope they do succeed in taking back Kherson and Kharkiv, and you know that this is the beginning of the end. But I have to say, I think there's a long way to go on it.
Okay, Christina and Martin, thank you very much for the moment. We have run out of time.